Welcome back to the PMR podcast. My name is Mitch. I'm an alcoholic addict. This is episode 33.
Shout out Larry Bird. My name's Andrew Staley. I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and I'm wicked happy to be here on this episode. We have another guest today. We had a really great episode, I think, last episode with the breathing exercises. That was kind of Mitch's. I don't know whose idea it was. It was kind of a joint idea, but when it came together, it was really cool to see your reaction, Mitch, is as that first like wave. I think you said it was like in the second round when it hit you. I don't know. I'm a total geek about breath work, and I really loved sharing that with you. But on to today's episode, we have Chuck. Although I've been calling him Charlie for like 8 months, it's okay. Chuck, from Virginia, and I've been working with Charlie for the last what, Charlie, 6 months.
Yep. Yep. Six
Um,
months.
6 months. You got 6 months a couple weeks ago, I think, right?
Yep.
Or month. Yeah. When's your date?
20 my date is September 23rd, 2022.
Cool. Cool. So you're coming up. So you're coming up in a couple weeks on 7 months. Charlie was a guest at Herren Wellness where I work. We've developed a pretty strong friendship, which I'm very, very grateful for. He's a great dude. You know, I wouldn't look at Charlie and say, oh, this is a guy who's got, 7 months of sobriety. I'd look at him. Not that it matters, the length of time, but to see the work he's put in just 6 months and change has made a huge difference in his life. And I'm really excited
hmm
you're on today, man.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Really appreciate it. First I just want to say how influential Andrew's been in my journey, along with breath work, being a positive role model around my age is, I'm extremely grateful, that I came to Heron and that Andrew, had just started working there about a month or so before I got there. Um, so yeah, I appreciate you, Andrew, and I appreciate both of y'all for having me on the podcast. Um, so yeah, my journey in recovery started about 6 months ago, and my life has changed exponentially. I couldn't be more happy with where I am right now, and you know the feelings that I was having before recovery are, they're still around in the shadows, but they don't rule my life anymore. Um, I grew up in a small town in Virginia, lived there my whole life. I have two older brothers. Both my parents are still together. Um, but ever since I was little, drinking was always a big thing. Um, and that's that's a huge part of my life, my family and drinking. My oldest brother um, has a medical condition that makes his bones extremely fragile. So my parents were always taking him to doctor's appointments, surgeries, hospitals, because he breaks his bones all the time. Like even this year, he's 25 now, and he's broken his wrist, his back last year. He has fractures in his foot. Um, and my parents are still, trying to help him along. My other brother, who is 24, 23 now, um, is special needs. And when I was about 3 or 4, that's when my parents were starting to find out all these medical issues with my brother. So from a really early age, I kind of got the feeling that, I need to help my parents a lot, be there for them, but I also, need to not create any problems for them.
Mm.
And from that, as I grew up, I began to feel like the black sheep. Like you know, I was really independent. I was smart. I played sports. But as soon as I came home at the end of the day, I stuck to myself. I was alone. I not on purpose, but I was isolated because my parents and my brothers had so much other stuff going on. Um, but despite all that, I lived a pretty happy childhood. Um, my dad works construction. He runs our family construction company, and he was gone a lot during the week. Whenever he came home, he really didn't want to do anything except sit down and watch baseball at the end of the day. Um, let alone like deal with me, help me like play sports. He never wanted to like throw catch in the yard. Um, so from stuff like that, I felt like what I wanted, wasn't good enough. Like just being a part of the family, that primal instinct that I had, wasn't worth it. And you know, that's pretty just my whole story. That I didn't feel worth it. I didn't feel like I was good enough. And the only way I could feel good enough was, giving up my self will for other people. Um, any relationship I was in, I would do anything, for them. And like if they ever asked me what I wanted to do, I was like, no, 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 no. Like, what do you want to do? What can I do for you? Um, and I refused help all the time. Um, so yeah, I mean, I grew up in this small town. When was in the same school from kindergarten to the eighth grade. Had all like the same five friends growing up. Um, but I always felt a little bit different. Like people were excited to go home at the end of the day, to see their family, and I was like, fuck, I got to go home and like be alone for hours and not have anything to look forward to. Like I hated actually driving to school, getting there, but once I got there, it was the best part of my day for sure. I love school because, with my friends were the only place I could feel a part of. Um, so yeah, I guess I should say, I had my first drink probably when I was around 10 years old. Um, stole a little like nips of Fireball from my parents, and me and my buddy just drank them all. And ever since then, I feel like I wanted to drink again. I was like, I can't wait till I'm old enough where I can drink at family parties, and not have people be bad at me. And so that's where that seed was planted. But through eighth grade, you know, I had anxiety and problems with depression. I thought I was just like anxious and had ADHD. So, I went to psychiatrist, got the Adderall, um, thought that would work, but that just ended up making me more depressed. And around the seventh and eighth grade year, um, my middle brother was really having problems in school. He switched like 3 or 4 schools during his high school year until he found a good fit. Um, and my parents were completely hands on with that. They would drive him like an hour, 2 hours a day there and back from school. Um, so they missed a lot of my soccer games. They missed a lot of my school activities because of it. But at that time, on the outside, I was like, it's all right. You got to do what you got to do for him. But the more I think about it, underneath, I was like, do you guys not care about me enough? Like, am I not good enough or loved enough for you guys to just spend a little bit of extra time with me, take interest in what I do? So, like, as all this was going through my head, I decided I wanted to leave home as soon as possible. And the best option I could or the one of the only options I had was go to boarding school. You know, most people like are upset because their parents send them away to boarding school, you know, because they're bad kids and they need the extra help. But I was like, finally, you know, I'm getting out of this place. And I couldn't have been more happy. My freshman year was good at boarding school. I wasn't smoking or drinking there. But quickly, my sophomore and junior year, you know, that anxiety started to creep back in. And I wasn't making a lot of friends. You know, a huge problem that I had is being sociable with people. You know, I have to really force myself to go out of the way, to me, as it seems, to meet people and try to talk to them and connect to them. And for me, pot and weed, you know, made that really much easier. Like it was like night and day. You know, I had like 5 friends at boarding school, but then it was almost like overnight. Like everybody kind of knew who I was. I was like connecting to upperclassmen and stuff. Um, so yeah, and it got so bad for me at boarding school. Like I was looking for a substance. Like when there was no pot, I would sneak into like the janitor's closets where they had like these big giant gallon bags of hand sanitizer that they fill up all like the little dispensers with. And me and my friends, you know, figured out how to like distill the gelatin and stuff out of it so it was only like the alcohol in it, and we would just get messed up. And it's so messed up that we figured out how to do that. And that was really right when that started happening. That was when, you know, my grades were getting bad. I was being a little bit more belligerent with like smoking weed in the dorm rooms. Till one night my junior year, I got kicked out of boarding school at like 10 o'clock at night. You know, they found me smoking in my room, alone of all things. And, you know, it was one of the worst days of my life. And, you know, funny little like story about it is, you know, Chris Herren, you know, who started Herren Wellness, spoke that night at my school. And like since then I held this like unjustifiable like resentment towards them because I was like, you're the reason I got kicked out of boarding school. Because I loved it there, to say the least, you know. But yeah, the next day I got sent home. Um, Spent the rest of my junior year doing one-on-one school just to get those credits. And, you know, that was fine. You know, I thought I kind of got what I deserved. I knew the consequences. But, you know, again, I was back home with my family who I, you know, was the people pleaser for. You know, I was a caretaker, drained a lot of my life force. I feel like, you know, just trying to do the best I can to please them. Um, my senior year, I went back to my old school, the one I left in 8th grade, and I still had a lot of friends there. But you know, like the second weekend, you know, my house became the party house, and um, my parents over the summer kind of were like, yeah, he's probably going to start drinking now that he's home. And, you know, so they were just kind of, as long as it's here, like, we're okay with it. You're not driving anywhere. And I was like, sweet, you know, so I threw parties all the time. Like when they went away on trips, I threw parties, invited a bunch of random people to my house. And like, it was really fun. Like, I'm not going to lie, but to see how it progressed so quickly for me is honestly scary, because senior year to the end of my sophomore year, you know, I was drinking for fun, but then the end of my sophomore year of college, um, I was a blackout drunk every single day. Um, and the feelings of anxiety, depression, and loneliness were only exacerbated by COVID, you know, which happened at the end of my senior year of high school. Um, that's, you know, my huge biggest battle, trying to not feel alone, trying to get rid of the anxiety that I felt every morning, every night. And for a little bit, I found solace in drinking and smoking. But even after a while, I got sick of it. I got sick and tired of feeling like crap every morning, throwing up what I drank the night before, not eating food, just living in like a shithole of an apartment because I was too lazy to take care of myself. And all I wanted to do was get drunk and pass out. Um, at the end of my sophomore year, the girlfriend that somehow I had for 2 years, broke up with me. I was devastated. The feelings of loneliness really, were kicked in then. Um, I decided to change my major. I went from a science major to kind of a construction major, and I needed to take summer courses so I could, get on track to graduate when I wanted to graduate. Um, and yeah, so I went to Virginia Tech, and that's in Blacksburg, Virginia, which is in the middle of absolutely nowhere, Southern Virginia. And being there for like a month and a half in the summer, I was alone. I'd go to class for like 6 hours in the morning, go home, get drunk, and then pass out at like 7 o'clock, wake up a couple hours later, and just, get more drunk. And that was just the cycle I had. Um, and I honestly thought it was all right. This is what people do. This is what like normal college kids do. Um, and so, that little summer semester ended and I had to go back home. And, I was like, damn it. Like, I wish I could just stay here away from everybody. But luckily, I still had friends in town from high school. And, we would party a little bit, but they all had jobs and I was just bumming around all day. So I was just waiting for the weekend when they could, come drink with me. Um, it wasn't like but a month after I got home from summer semester that I got my DUI. Me and all my friends went on a trip down to the Chesapeake region of Virginia, and I drank the whole way down there. I was driving myself down there. And I killed like a whole case of like Coors Light, and I was just pissed drunk when I got there already. And I just kept drinking. And around 12 o'clock that first night, I just blacked out, and that what I think happened, because I obviously don't remember, but like I know I was feeling anxious just going there, and I know like deep down I really didn't want to be there. I just wanted to be alone and drink by myself. And so I got in my car at like 12 o'clock and just started driving home blackout drunk. And I was about an hour and a half up the road, I think, and like towards my home, when I woke up behind the wheel and was looking straight at a guardrail on the other side of the road. And as soon as that happened, I sobered up instantly. I was like, fuck my life. Like, how am I, like, I wasn't even wearing like a shirt or shoes. I was just in the middle of the road, like hardly any clothes on, and going to jail, handcuffs, cops showed up. Um, and, that was one of my bottoms, my big bottoms that I had. Um, but it didn't stop me from drinking. The next 2 months before my court date, I kept drinking. I kept drinking and driving whenever I could. The only reason I would go to town was to pick up more beer and then just go back home and, just drink all afternoon. Um, but my real downfall was the depression and the almost like manic episodes I was having. Like I just couldn't fathom like this is where my life was. It's like I woke up one morning and looked in the mirror and I was like I'm a piece of shit. Like I really don't want to be alive anymore. And I'm extremely grateful for my parents because they could see this, progression in real time. Um, my mom, I would come down the stairs every morning and I thought she was mad at me. And I was like, Mom, why are you mad at me? Like, I'm awake, I'm doing stuff. And she was like, I think back at it now, it was fear. She was so scared for my life and sad that her youngest child was doing this to himself. Um, you know, and I'm glad she is who she is, but she kept on wearing on me just to get help, begging me to get help, you know. And I finally got a counselor, and um, it was all right, but it was over the phone. So I was just drinking while I was in my therapist sessions, and my counselor probably had some idea because she was like, "Yeah, you need to get more help than you're letting on." Um, and they're not supposed to do it, but she was talking to my mom about like what I was saying and stuff. And I thank God that she did, because they were talked about Herren. It was one of the first places they brought up. And the day I decided to go, you know, I just broke down. I couldn't take it anymore. I asked my mom for the guy's number at Herren. I was like, "Mom, please, I really need help." And I surrendered. Um, you know, that's how I got here pretty much. A week later, I showed up at Herren, and, the beginning of a new life happened. So, yeah.
Charlie, what's your life been like at Heron? How's that journey been?
Um,
from the first day to where you are right now.
yeah. It's been hard work, a lot of hard work looking, um, meeting with life coaches, talking in groups about like trying to, pinpoint, why I have felt this way for a majority of my life. Um, and why, I felt it was necessary to drink, instead of, really be who I am. And, at first, I only thought I was going to be there a month. So I said what I needed to say, just to get to the end of that month. And then they were like, "No, no, it's not just a month. You're staying 2 months." And like whatever they said, how long I would stay, my parents were just like, "Thumbs up, go for it." And I was like, "God damn it." Um, but I soon began to realize, with alumni and especially talking with Andrew, how great life really can be. And, it wasn't like, probably after my second month, I was like, "All right, I think I can do this." I really am an alcoholic. I need this help. So I'm going to do as much as I can. I'll stay however long y'all want me to. Um, it's been life changing. And Andrew, I know you know what I'm talking about. Um, like the community at Herren is like one in a million. You know, um, like last night, I actually shared my story with the alumni Zoom, um, and it's crazy because like there's people who don't even live around here who like reaching out to me to like talk to me, give me their number, and it's like where am I right now? Like what is happening? Because no one's ever done that in my life. Um, and I know from their experiences that recovery works.
It's beautiful, brother. It's beautiful. Mm. The only another question I have is, besides Heron, how are you, you know, what do you do? Do you do AA? Are you in NA? I mean, I know the meetings that you go to, but tell us a little bit
Yeah.
of your experience there.
Um, at first, you know, I, when I finally started identifying, I was like, yeah, I'm an alcoholic. And it took me a while. Like we mostly went to AA meetings when they took us. Um, and a lot of the meetings we're going to of like AA meetings, you know, I just really couldn't. I didn't, you know, relate with a lot of the people. You know, I didn't like their how they ran the meetings, and I know that's me being picky, but I did end up getting a sponsor in AA. You know, I'm out on my step 4 now. Um, but just talking with people about it now, like there's this NA meeting we go to on Tuesdays that I was like, I like these guys better. You know, these guys won't let me slack off because, you know, I've been quote unquote working on my step 4 for like a month and a half now. And, you know, I'm not really in touch with my sponsor, and that's on me. Um, but like I know there's people at this NA meeting. It's a men's meeting who will, you know, help me keep in track. I enjoy going to their meetings, and they're all business, you know. So I'm still really trying to figure it out if that answers your question. But I try to go to a meeting every day, whether it's NA or AA. You know, I just need some kind of connection or recovery group in my life. That's a huge part for me, just the connection.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. The connection and community is so fucking vital. It's been vital for me from jump. How old are you?
I'm 21.
21. Yeah. So I mean, you and I got sober pretty much the same time. Um, and I remember doing the same thing, like meeting shopping, you know, trying to figure out
Yeah.
which group, except for me, I was trying to find people I could finesse or a little bit, trying to find a sponsor that was easier or someone that would tell me I'm doing good, even, you know, or say that it would be okay, even if I didn't do this or that. All right, so I commend you on already making it to the step 4, and don't trip off of, you know, how long you've been on it or this or that. All that shit's kind of bullshit, bro. I spent 3 years on step 4. So you're in a good spot, my guy. I relate a lot to your story though. And I appreciate you sharing so honestly about it. I relate to, I got kicked out of like 2 middle schools, 2 swim teams, almost kicked out of college. Um, and I also related to you when you were speaking on coming home and not feeling, um, or like not wanting to go home to a certain extent, you know, or
Yeah.
feeling better with like at school or the community you had with like your boys at school and stuff like that. I completely relate to that. Um, and Yeah, man, I mean that's a powerful story. The fucking the DUI, I had that same moment of being like, oh fuck. And I'll never forget like the fucking handcuffs and all that shit. And I think I stayed out for another like 6 months after that too. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of eerie how some of our experiences are the same, but I was just nodding my head the whole time you were talking because it's kind of wild how we just keep going, you know, like that bottom
Yeah.
isn't, I've said this a bunch, that bottom isn't like when the worst thing in your life happens to you. That bottom is like when you kind of shared this too, when you're kind of like, I'm done. Like it's when you
Mm-hmm.
decided to change, when you decided to try to take that leap of faith. Like, you know, you told your mom, like, I need help. I had the same fucking phone call. It was like 10 minutes of a window where I was like looking in the mirror, like, I fucking hate
Yeah.
you. You need fucking help, you know? So thank you for sharing your story with us like that. Fucking
Of
couldn't
course.
relate to it
Appreciate
more.
it.
Yeah.
Charlie, you know, I'm kind of biased because I know you pretty well. But I mean, there's a couple things I could really relate to in that story. I mean, especially almost I mean, like what Mitch was just talking about. I mean, the bottoms. My sponsor always says like, you know, if you think you've hit your bottom and you're still using, you know, you're always carrying a shovel.
Yeah.
You'll just keep digging. Like there's always a new bottom, and I found that like again and again, like every situation where I thought you know, this is the worst possible thing that could happen to me, and you know, I'd find a way to outdo it, like yeah, in a way that I didn't think imaginable, and it's like when I hear you talking about like distilling hand sanitizer and like all this other shit that you're doing, like it's crazy, like when we start when we're all like relatively, you know, young, we're all in our 20s, like when we start using, all of us, like in our teens and everything like that, like did you ever tell yourself like there's gonna be some shit that like I'll never do that and I'll never do that and I'll never, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and it's crazy, like where we're like, okay, well, I'm gonna cross that line, but also, but I'll never do that. Like I told myself, like, all right, I'm never gonna take pills. Like I'm gonna smoke weed, but I'm never gonna take pills. And when I started taking pills, I was like, all right, I'll take pills, but I'm never gonna do cocaine. I'm never gonna do any powder. And then like, and then I do cocaine. I say, okay, I'm never gonna mix the two. Like it's like it every
Hmm.
time there's a line, it's like we cross it. And when I hear some aspects of your story, like, oh, you're in summer school because you switch your major and you're blacking out every day, and you go from being like a kid who hosts high school parties to a kid who's like drinking alone in his apartment to blackout every single
Yeah.
night. And or even in when you were in boarding school, like a kid who got introduced to weed and like was drinking some beers, to a kid who figured out how to distill the alcohol from hand sanitizer. Like
Yeah.
it's the lengths we go to are insane. And hearing your story like reminds me, like, if I go back out, like there's a brand new line that I'll cross. Like there's a brand new, like every line, for how bad I think I was, how bad I think it was in active addiction. Like there's always a new line that I'll cross. There's always a new bottom that I'll create. Um, and I don't know, just hearing you talk about that was really kind of brought me back to like those moments, and they're really scary. Like they're really, really scary moments when like you kind of look back at your decision to do it, like even that night or something, or like later, maybe later in the week or the next day, and you're like, wow, like I really did that. Like
Yeah.
and I almost didn't think twice about it in the moment. Like, Mitch, did that shit ever happen to you?
Definitely. A lot of times. Uh, I did want to say, ask you a question. Like, do you feel like having getting sober now, like I know I had all these like insane thoughts of like getting sober so young where I was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out and kind of stayed like that for a while. Like, is that anything that you've like felt at all? Like, not saying that you're not don't want to do it or don't want to do that, but I had like a hard time really finally like surrendering, because we all
Yeah.
got sober so young. It's like there's no way that I'm a fucking alcoholic, bro. Like I was like
No,
so
for
upset
sure.
about that.
I mean, like, I remember when I was 16 and I was drinking with my friends and I was like, oh shit, I'm probably going to be an alcoholic because I knew what it looked like for my uncles and family.
Yeah.
But when I got here, um, I was like, they were kept wearing me down. I was like, or they weren't, but like in groups and stuff, they were like, people are like, yeah, I can't drink anymore. And I was like, damn it. Like, I can give up drinking, but like, I love smoking pot too.
Right.
So it was like, it took me a while before I told my life coach that. I was like, yeah, I'll give up drinking, but I think I'm going to keep smoking pot. And she was like, okay. But like, she's like, she wasn't going to force me to do anything. But, I totally relate to that being like, I'm 21. Like, I want to go out and be a part of like parties, like, you know, have fun. But I quickly realized, my life now is 100 times better than it'd ever be if I was drunk or high.
Mhm.
You know, Andrew and I laugh all the time. Like he's really like one of my best friends now, and we spend a lot of time laughing. But then we can also have those introspective conversations, that make us even closer. And that's with a lot of people in the community I have right now. And there are times, I'll be honest, where it's like, you know, I can drink right now, but
Mhm.
then I go back and I'm like, I talk to people about it. I talk to my good friends there, and they remind me, like how special, the life I have is now. How I'm just grateful to be like in recovery, really. That gratitude gets me through a lot.
Hmm. I love that you said that. It's like, how fast do we forget how bad it was? You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm like 6.5 years sober, and like sometimes I'm like, I'll be like, I don't even remember how bad it was. I don't remember the feelings of how bad it was. Like, was it really that
Yeah.
bad? Yeah, it really was that bad. You know what I mean? Especially, and like, it's crazy how like tricky and conniving our like addictive brain can be. It'll twist shit up all the way, and it gets more creative the longer you're sober. Really. But you mentioning the gratitude is like huge. Andrew and I, as I'm sure you know, are like, we're super grateful gratitude list, like try to
Yeah.
channel that all the time. I mean, it's the best way to get out of your head is to write down those 10 things you're grateful for in that moment. So I
Hmm.
love that.
Mitch, how do you keep like you say you got to, we have that built-in forgetter, right? Like and I struggle with this too. Like I'll forget how bad it was, like on purpose. And how do you keep it fresh? Like what do you because I don't want to go back and have to like, remember like all the shitty times, you know what I mean? Like to keep it fresh.
Yeah.
But I need something to remind me of like, oh, that's not where I want to go back to. Like
uh
it's
yeah,
difficult for me.
definitely is. I'd say the best way for me to remember is to go to a meeting and talk to a newcomer or listen to a newcomer. I also work in recovery as well, so I see, I work with newcomers at my job, and I see newcomers at the meetings I go to, and I feel like through hearing their story and seeing some of the guys struggle initially and talking about like this, that, and the other, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I remember that exactly. That's pretty much the best way for me to really rechannel that in a positive way, I guess. Uh,
Charlie, I've seen and I've heard you voice it before. Like, do you see yourself working in recovery? Like, where do you see yourself going from here? Because I've seen the way that you work, like Mitch just said, like with the newcomer and Charlie. Again, like Charlie has been. I started working in August at Herren. Charlie showed up in September, and since then, Charlie's been a lead, like a big, like a massive leader. Um, not only for like the kids his age, but everyone and anyone walking into Heron. So, Charlie, do you think like working in recovery or like where do you see yourself going with that?
First, I appreciate you saying that. But I mean, yeah, if I could work at Heron, if they'd offer me a job, I would for sure. And I think, being involved in recovery that way is really important to me because, allows me to help other people, but it also keeps, through, just that process of recovery, it keeps me focused on myself. Um, because, um, that's one of my things. I love helping people, but sometimes I can get, a little bit too involved. And I know, there will be people like you and, other people I know who will check me and be like, take a step back. Um, but yeah, I think helping other people in recovery as maybe not at a recovery center, but even like in like the service of like AA groups, is really important to me. Where I'm from in Virginia, they don't have a lot of great recovery, but the mental health is, just got is in the forefront there in my town. Um, and I know I have opportunities to become a recovery coach down there one day if I need to. They have like programs to train people in, and it's always been in the back of my mind. That's something I might want to do.
I love that. I think we all relate to that, working in recovery and stuff. I think we might have. Did we lose you, Andrew? Maybe. Hold on one second. Are we good? Um, Um, just about working in recovery. So I know someone or mad people have told me this is to you still got to separate, your recovery from working in recovery. And I was told that like 1,000 times before I started my job. And then within the first 3 weeks, I was like, fuck, my recovery is my work recovery, you know? So that's like a sneaky thing because like we want to be of service and help others and stuff like that. But you have your own program or, whatever works for you. AA, NA, working out, breathing, meditation, whatever your concoction is, make sure that that's the number one thing. You feel me? Don't put anything in front of that because if you do, you'll lose it. I remember someone told me a long time ago, anything you put in front of your recovery, you'll lose 100%. So that's a big one for me. I did want to say though, it's pretty awesome to see like you guys in your relationship and to hear you speak so fondly of Andrew and to hear Andrew speak so fondly of you. That's a fucking beautiful thing. And I think like we have a special ability being young in recovery. And like that's why you related so much to Andrew because he's young, he's working in there, he's vocal, uh, you know, fucking stand-up guy. And I think that's awesome. Like that's exactly what we're trying to do is try to connect to the younger age group through sharing our story and like just by just like watching you guys and hearing you guys is like the main mission. That's fucking awesome. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. And Andrew, just wanted to say thank you for doing what you're doing too. I know I tell you this all the time, but you're a powerful dude. So I love that you're doing work there at Herren and spreading that, and that'd be sick if Chuck came in there and you're just like building this goddamn recovery army.
That's the plan, man. And I do want to comment like real quick just on, I mean, something Charlie said and something I thoroughly believe too. And, and you guys can touch on it, but like when I was using and I was drinking and whatever else, like I had friends and Charlie, you talked about your 5 friends in boarding school and in high school. And, I can't speak on the nature of those relationships specifically, but for me, like every friendship I had, most friendships I had, 99% of the friendships I had were superficial. And it wasn't like malicious. It wasn't because I didn't want to connect with people. It's because the only way that I knew how to connect with people was through drugs and alcohol. Like I could identify with individuals who wanted to get high and drunk. Um, and because of that, like the relationships that I made, a lot of them, um, they were surface level, and even if they were deeper, it was like, and this is not to glorify, this is just the truth. Like it was deeper because we both had an acid trip together. Like it was just like it was a joke. And because of that, and I'm not sitting here like trying to throw my friends under the bus. Like, I do have friends from that time in my life that I still are very close to and that I talk to and that the relationship has changed. But in sobriety, one of the biggest differences I've seen is like I've learned and am continuing to learn how to like get close to someone, like and how to build an actual relationship. Like Mitch, you and I have never met in person. And I'm closer with you than with 99% of the people that I spent a lot of time with in college. Like that's a fact. And Charlie, like I've known you for, 6 months and change. And again, I'm because of the journey that we share, like the three of us, like the journey that we share in recovery. I'm closer with you, Charlie, than I could say about, again, like 99% of the people that I've been friends with in childhood and beyond. Because when you get sober, when I got sober, like all these feelings and these like insecurities and these anxieties, they started coming flooding out of me. And I wanted somebody that could identify with them. Like, and in recovery, I found people that can identify. Like, I can call Mitch and be like, I'm hung up on this girl, or I'm hung up on this or that. Like, and he goes, uh-huh. Like he goes, I know how you feel. Like, and that's like what's one of the most powerful things that I could that I could ever have experienced. Like, and I don't know. It's a crazy thing. I mean, Mitch, you want to touch on that? I mean, it's like it's insane to me that I'll call you like I'll call you over people that I knew in college all 4 years and that I room with, because I know that you're gonna give me like you're gonna listen to me, and then you're gonna give me some advice that like that I can actually identify with.
Yeah, it's because we share something that you can't learn in a book and that you can't fucking experience unless you experience it. You feel me? And that there's an unwritten and an understood, like it's like by nature of meeting someone in recovery and by nature of meeting someone in recovery that's near your age and has a similar experience, it's like we're automatically bonded because we don't even really need to talk about it. It's kind of like I work with a lot of vets and I see a lot of these guys bonding through not even talking because they have a shared experience through going, in similar combat situations, or they shared a deployment somewhere, or even if they didn't, just by nature of being a veteran in the military here, they kind of give a nod and that's it. That's an instant bond. We have the same thing. So I think that's like the most beautiful thing and the most important thing in terms of building community. And our community is like we're instantly, attached at the hip just by nature of, going through the same thing. And we lean on community and friends so heavy that it's just a vital part of our recovery is to have these connections and to build these connections. And yeah, so I completely agree with what you're saying on that. Definitely.
Charlie, how's that changed for you?
How, when I first, got into recovery, it was hard for me to see like how I'm gonna relate to these people. The first couple of weeks, I was like, I'm not like this guy. I'm not like that guy. This guy's like 65 years old. Like, how can I be friends with him? Um, but it's crazy. Like, I genuinely, I mean, I have genuine connections with people that I've never had in my entire life, and like I'm still like in touch with like my friends from before I was in recovery, but the friendships that I had then are nowhere near as genuine and like close, as they are now. I would like give them up, you know, like over you guys in like a minute, because what I've found in myself, I found in other people. I found like I don't feel alone anymore. And I think that's what does it for me. Even with my friends before then, before recovery, I felt alone whenever I was around them. I felt different then. And, like, why do I feel this way? Like they weren't like mean to me. Like they wanted to be friends with me, but from as much as I tried, I didn't feel that genuine connection with them that I've found with people in recovery.
Yeah, it's like feeling alone in a full room. I
Mm-hmm.
had that all
Yeah.
through high school. It's like I had a lot of using friends, a lot of party friends, a lot of friends that like to get as fucked up as I did, and we were all buddies. But as soon as I got sober, unfortunately, a lot of those dudes I had to remove from my life, or they kind of removed themselves. You feel me? And so
Yeah.
not to say that that needs to happen or that no ill will towards them and stuff like that, but you as we get sober, we do have to change people, places, and things. I mean, it's a
Mm-hmm.
catchphrase for a reason.
Man, it's crazy, Charlie, for me to sit here and chop it up about this shit with you, like after like I'm meeting you in September, and I don't know, somebody at Herren was like, "Oh, you'll get along with him. He was a lacrosse player," and like we've talked about lacrosse like once, maybe. And
Yeah.
I remember coming up to you and being like, "Oh, so you play lacrosse?" And you were like, "A little bit." Just seeing you kind of like coming to your own, really, like it's night and day. It's really impressive. And just the last question I want to talk about, because it's important for people like us and people in early recovery and young people in recovery, is you talk a lot about your relationship with your family in your story, and I want to know
Mm-hmm.
like how has that changed, and how is you living in recovery? How has that altered that?
Night and day, how I feel about them. Um, Before I left to come to Herren, I didn't talk to my dad for like 3 days. I was like upset with my mom, but she caused me so much anxiety and frustration, just in her daily life, like nothing I had to own. But like now, I've never felt more a part of my family than I do today. She doesn't like, I take pride in the fact that she doesn't have to worry if I'm like drunk in a ditch somewhere, or, like blackout drunk in some random city. But like when I started recovery journey, they started their recovery journey too. Um, Not to say that they're alcoholics or addicts, but me going on this journey has, inevitably changed how they view themselves and view emotions and, the feelings we all hold inside. And it's brought us closer, like tenfold. I can't wait to see my dad when he comes up to visit me. My mom was just up here last weekend, or yeah, last week. She could only come up for the day, but she flew from Virginia to spend the day with me and then flew back to Virginia. And, like that's all she could do, because she had to come home that night to see my grandma. My grandma lives with us and needs help. But like she didn't have to do that. She could have waited for a better time, but she wanted to see me, so she decided to come up. Um, but my relationship with my parents is, it's huge for me. That's one of the biggest wins I have in my recovery right now. Other than being sober for 6 months and just being happy, like I'm great. I'm grateful for the family I have.
It's beautiful, brother. It comes from a place of like, and I was the same way. Like I was full of resentment, uh, kind of like, why me, and I'm the black sheep, and blaming some of my problems on them and on their inattention. And it all kind of, in the end, it all kind of boiled down to just like misplaced, resentment, and
Mm-hmm.
really what it was like a self-hatred that I had to put on someone else. And seeing those relationships change, or like, that's for me, that's really been the true gift of recovery, is in my family. Like, and you said it really well, is like, when we start our recovery journey, they do too. Like, they might not be, alcoholics and addicts, but we we tend to open like our family's eyes to something that they either didn't think was possible, or that they just, they couldn't even really conceptualize in terms of, you know, my parents, they'll see me wake up, and like I'm praying, or I'm on the phone with an alcoholic or addict, or I'm back in the gym because I didn't go to the gym for 4 or 5 years. Like, I didn't exercise. I refused to, like, or whatever. Like, and the strength that we get in recovery, like, to fully like 180 change our lives, not like material wise, but in our habits and our thoughts and the way we treat people. Like, that's a miracle to our families.
It
And
is, yeah.
sometimes it's difficult for us to see. Like, sometimes I wake up and I'm having an off day, or I didn't get to the gym, or whatever the hell the thing is that's jamming me up. But like, in those moments, it's my family that reminds me, like, hey, like, keep going. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a really, really wonderful thing. So I'm happy that you have that. Hmm. This has been a really cool experience, man.
Yeah. Appreciate y'all for having me on.
Yeah.
Really do.
Yeah, it was dope to talk with you and hear your story. And I'm excited to be connected to you now, going forward with Andrew and everything like that. Um yeah, I mean, it's just like it's pretty wild to see that Andrew was there at the jump when you got there, and that he kind of walked with you through that whole experience, and now we're sitting here on a fucking podcast, sharing our
Yeah.
story, ripping a meeting this Friday early afternoon. But yeah, man,
Ripping a meeting.
yes sir, ripping a meeting, more or less. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I really,
Of
really
course.
appreciate you. I know it takes a lot for us to come on sometimes, and share our story in this way. So truly, truly appreciate you sharing it with us like that. And Andrew, thank you for putting us in contact and getting this set up. It was a dope one for sure.
Yeah, thanks for being open to doing, the Herren connection here.
The Herren connection, yeah.
And hopping in. We're gonna get you out to Herren, man. You should come out and check it
Yeah,
out.
so I gotta peep it.
It's a good spot. There's a lot of cool stuff happening there. And same token for me, I gotta get out and check out, what's the name of the place you work at?
It's a treatment center out here.
All right, fair enough.
I gotta see if I'm
Anonymity.
allowed to. I don't know if I'm allowed to.
Anonymity is cool. As I asked that question,
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't be asking this question.
It's all good.
It's all right.
I'm sure they
I'm
wouldn't
still
care.
learning.
No, I'm sure they wouldn't care, but I gotta figure that out first. But Charlie, Chuck, my man, appreciate you. Appreciate everyone listening. This was a very dope episode, Larry Bird episode 33, even though I'm a Kobe Lakers fan. But we will keep coming back, and love you guys. Appreciate it.
Love you guys.
Thank you,
Keep
man.
coming.
Y'all have a good day.